NBA playoff ratings are through the roof. We've got two ESPN basketball broadcasters and Ryan Ruocco and Chiney Ogwumike joining us to weigh in on NBA playoffs and more. Hello and welcome into Front Office Sports Today from our FOS studio in New York City. I'm Renee Washington.
And I'm Baker Machado. Thanks again for joining us during our big premiere week, everyone. Every weekday, of course, Renee and I are going to chat about some of the biggest stories in sports and culture. And yes, guys, there is more Bill Belichick, Jordan Hudson drama we're going to get to later. But first, Renee, let's kick things off with some of the other headlines we're watching in the Shootaround. All right, and let's start with some big news in some hockey updates as Seattle has been named the next professional women's hockey league expansion franchise. This for the upcoming 2025-26 season. They're going to share a home with the NHL's Kraken over at the Climate Pledge Arena. Along with Vancouver, the PWHL Seattle franchise will be the first expansion team to join the inaugural 6 markets. An official name, by the way, has not been announced. Meanwhile, in the NHL, the Utah Hockey Club may have accidentally announced their team name, as there was a slip-up on YouTube that fans had quickly noticed that the channel was changed to Utah Mammoth. However, the club is not commenting on this and reportedly won't announce the name until June. Now, Mammoth was one of 3 options presented to fans for a vote, including the Utah Hockey Club, which I like, in addition to the Utah Outlaws as well, Renee.
Well, I don't like the fact we're getting more and more reports of prank calls from the NFL draft, Baker. Now, Abdul Carter is the latest to say he received the prank call. The only caller we know of is Jax Ulbrich, the son of Falcons defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich, who called Shedeur Sanders. Now, the league has fined Atlanta $250,000. Jeff was fined $100,000. And as the Falcons issued a statement, they said that they're confident in their security policies and also just how they emphasize adherence to them with their staff and making sure that they're doing their due diligence. The league also put out a statement saying how the Falcons did not follow protocol. Now, over on the hardwood, there's more NBA playoff ratings that are in. Of the 11 games that aired on ESPN or ABC, there was an average of 4.45 million viewers. But what has helped the NBA playoffs 13% increase in viewership from last year? Let's get into that with our first guest of the show in our main event. We now welcome in NBA, WNBA, and college hoops broadcaster with ESPN, Ryan Ruocco, Mr. You Bet himself. Ryan, listen, right now as we're looking at the first round of playoffs, we were just talking about the ratings, the numbers. We've seen 36 games, 21 of them have come down to 10 or less points. But despite all of that, we have 2 sweeps, 2 gentlemen sweeps. Is this year's first round playoff showing us that individual games, whether it's, the thrillers, the controversial calls, are just as important, if not more important, than even the standings and the records of the series itself?
Yeah, Renee, I think that's a great point, because I think one of the things I think we always underrate when it comes to ratings is how competitive the games are. We talk about stars and we talk about matchups, and of course that matters, and that is always going to raise your floor and your ceiling, right? When you have certain teams and you have certain stars in the games. But then a lot of what happens in that middle and that variance comes from, are the games good or not? And just think about your own habits as a viewer. You are much more likely to stay with a game that's a single possession game, even if it's a 3-0 series or a 3-1 series or a 2-0 series, than you are a 30-point blowout in a 2-2 series, right? Like you're going to be much more compelled to stick with that game. And I think that's what we've had in this first round. We have had very competitive, exciting games with scintillating finishes, unbelievable shot making. And then even though, a lot of the series have not gone deep, at least not yet, the games have been so good that I think they've drawn in the viewers and been able to keep them.
Ryan, I'd love to get your thoughts yesterday on the Giannis, Tyrese Haliburton dad situation. Obviously, it seems like it's ended okay. Everybody sort of has had a kumbaya moment at the end, but I'm curious your thoughts on sort of still protecting the fan experience and what makes the NBA amazing, but also sort of protecting the players at the same time. Are you concerned about this based off of what happened yesterday?
Well, I mean, I think, the NBA takes its security very seriously, which, we're all grateful for. So I'm sure there's going to be some sort of reemphasis on, hey, whoever you're allowing on the floor at the end of a game can't be doing that. I mean, obviously what Tyrese's dad did was completely and totally unacceptable. And that's what Tyrese said as well, right? I do feel grateful that all parties seem to come to a conclusion and an understanding of, it being inappropriate and accepting apologies and moving on from there, because emotions were obviously running high. And then look, not from the security standpoint, which is first and foremost the most important thing in a situation like that, but just from an entertainment standpoint, I do think what happened with the Pacers and what happened with Tyrese Haliburton is significant and good for continuing to build on the interest and excitement around him and around the Pacers. And so when you add sort of entertainment layers, not ones that put anybody's safety at risk or cross the line like last night, that all I think is really good for business.
Ryan, I'm curious your thoughts. Was this our last time, in your opinion, seeing Giannis in a Bucks jersey?
I think it's up to Giannis, and I don't know what he will want to do. I think it's interesting because his teammate, Damian Lillard, you can look at as a cautionary tale, right? Now, he had a breakdown with management that made Portland feel, I think, less, enticing than it had been for the majority of his career. But would he be enjoying playing in Portland, even if they're barely scraping into the play-in or the playoffs or not at all, more than what's happened these 2 years in Milwaukee trying to win a championship? He probably would, right? Like the Portland experience, the franchise that was in his soul, probably would offer more. And I think you can say something similar as, a potential path for Giannis. He's already won this team a championship. He's going to go down as the greatest player in franchise history in all likelihood because of the longevity in this place. If he were to stay, there's no guarantee for Giannis to go somewhere else and compete. So I think it's kind of up to him. If I was the Bucks, I'd be kind of, caught in the middle as well, because the reality is they don't have the roster flexibility nor the draft assets to be able to compete as currently constructed. They just don't. It's not going to happen over the next 2 or 3 years. But that doesn't mean having an all-time great star at the core of your team who draws fans every night and still makes you a 40 to 47 win team is a bad thing, right? It just means you don't have a legitimate shot at winning a championship. So I think that's a tough decision for Giannis. If he has an inkling to just want to experience something else, now is the time. And he's kind of flirted with the idea of big markets publicly in the past. So now would be the time, because he's not going to compete for a championship for at least a few years in Milwaukee with how, barren the coffers are.
Okay, so Ryan, we also got to ask you about the WNBA as well. Some new advancements that ESPN is doing when it comes to exhibition games. We've got a lot of fever games that you're going to be covering as well. What are your thoughts on this, and also the fact that, the Fever are selling out arenas across the country? They're even promoting this as every game now is a home game. I mean, what's your thoughts on this?
I mean, I love the Fever leaning all the way into their popularity and not being ashamed of it or shy about it. This is the reality of the situation. And as someone who is, boots on the ground, so to speak, at these arenas and witnessing what Caitlin brings and what we've seen at Fever games, from over last year and what we're expecting this year. I mean, this is the reality that her fan base travels and then her fan base expands to whatever team she's a part of and the players on that team as well. And I think it's awesome the way ESPN has continued to invest more and more in this property. And I think that, ESPN has always been at the forefront of this, but has continued to say, how can we get better? How can we do more? How can we grow this? So I love the idea of us being in Iowa, getting to broadcast the preseason game on ESPN this coming weekend and see what it's like as Caitlin goes back to, where she created so many thrills for those fans. I think it's going to be a great first look for a lot of fans at their team. And, the spectacle of Caitlin being back at Carver Hawkeye is going to be pretty incredible.
It absolutely will. Thank you again, Ryan, for that and for your time as well. We appreciate it.
You got it. No problem.
Coming up, we've got Chiney Ogwumike, another ESPN basketball analyst in the house, joining Baker to talk about her women-focused production company, her comedy series on the W, and Stephen A. Smith's potential presidential run. All that right here.
So we're very excited to be joined here in studio by Chiney Ogwumike. Chiney, great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Big news that you are now involved with your production company in a 30-minute scripted comedy series. I mean, this is crazy.
I know. I still have to pinch myself that this is real life, especially considering that it's about kind of my real life, loosely based on our experiences, myself and Allison Gaylor, my longtime agent and business partner. But it's necessary. One of the things that I've told people is that we're taking the main topic, which is women's sports, to the mainstream. That is the vision of Victorious, our company. And now, everyone knows the nature of the business, especially in Hollywood. That's where I'm based. We swung on our first chance at a scripted series and we hit a home run. And so I'm super excited and it's still surreal.
So tell us a little bit more about this. It's a 30-minute comedy show, but it's about, you mentioned you and your agent, but it's also about the WNBA. It's about a bunch of different things.
Yeah, so it's the first look we've ever seen, a historic first look into the WNBA, which is a women's sports league of modern times. I know people know the League of Their Own type of history, but this is a modern look at what it's like to be a female athlete at this historic, momentous time to be a women's basketball player. And so it's based off of our world. And one thing I've realized is that oftentimes we see these stories in sports, guys, it's ballers, or it's hustle, or it's entourage, right? When you think about the real world aspect, no one knows what it's like to be a woman in this business and hustle. So you might see LeBron James sit courtside, you're oh, he's so cool, wearing all the cool things. But then I might be a couple seats next to him, sitting courtside, enjoying an event. People don't know what it took for us to get there. We might need to know the security guard, play hoops and pickup, and build relationships to get opportunity. And so we've seen many projects take, root and do successfully, like Running Point. But we were very excited that our perspective will be the player's perspective, because these players are captivating hearts and minds, from Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Asia Wilson, Paige Beckers, Juju Watkins. I know what it's like to want to achieve at the highest level, but then, the amount of scrutiny in this moment, it's straight comedy. Honestly, we thought, this is the crazy thing, we thought that our world was a drama. All I do was watch dramas. Then we started realizing, there's a wider perspective that might bring people in so that they can be educated to who we are. So it's been a long process, even for us to understand that our life is not a joke, it's real.
Totally.
But now to have the validation that we are here, we've arrived, we have a scripted show. It's based on the league, it's based on the W, and it's meant to uplift our game. Even if you just come in for the vibes, here for it.
Right. By the way, do we have a platform for this? It's Peacock, right?
Yeah, Peacock.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what made Peacock the perfect place for this to be a part of?
Well, first and foremost, I'm just really grateful that Disney and ESPN, they all understood that, hey, we have a certain inventory. We are experts at live sports. As you know, Chiney, you are working them on both NBA, WNBA, women's college basketball. But if there's a home that is really suited for this, go pursue it. Because, what I have found is that NBC is making a real push, as we all know, in the basketball space, back with the rights for the NBA and even women's professional basketball, the WNBA. And coming off of the success of the Olympics, especially women's basketball, they've done doc features on Juju Watkins. And so I don't want to spill too much tea. I have my people here, but we went in there and I've never had to pitch a show before. And we did it with all the biggest of the big. And they were instant, we see it, we get it, we love it, we want to invest in it. And so their passion for the project has really just, we all feel like we're on the same team. And I'm grateful to have, a team at ESPN and Disney that understands that I can pursue my dreams, even sometimes a little bit with a neighboring partner.
Well, and it makes a lot of sense, especially for ESPN, given the fact that you just signed a big new deal last year, and a lot of the people who are signing big deals, Stephen A. Smith included, have bigger, larger production deals that allows them to do all of these things on the outside. How sort of important was that when you were in your negotiations with ESPN to be allowed to, yes, do all these games for men's and women's basketball, but allowed to do other things to keep your name out there?
We're athletes. We always were we're fiending for feedback. And, everyone knows that when I show up, I want to learn, I want to grow, and I want to keep expanding myself. And I think that they all supported that same mission in me. And so like they were fully aware of my ambitions outside. They, as long as, they're like, hey, let's take a peek before you go and take it to anyone else. Like, okay, we really love this for you. We may not be ready for it, but we don't want to block your blessings.
Mm-hmm. You're doing NBA Countdown, you're doing WNBA Countdown. You're literally the only person that's able to do both men's and women's coverage. Do you sort of look and analyze the games differently, or do you sort of look at it the same? It's just the genders that are different.
Different animals, same beast, right? That was like the late great Kobe Bryant's phrase. It's interesting because like on one world I am NBA and I'm here fighting for elbow space with my boy Richard Jefferson and Kendrick Perkins, and Malika is a fantastic teammate, and just being able to, like, that's family, right? Like, those are I didn't have brothers, right? So I have 3 sisters, and so I feel like I genuinely have brothers now because we started the show together almost 5 years ago, and it's just grown into a mainstay, which is awesome. I mean, the funny thing is we don't even talk about basketball anymore.
Really?
What do you guys talk?
What do you guys talk about? Talk about severance? What do you guys talk about?
No, it's politics.
Oh, yes, it's true. For
because
Stephen A,
like literally the last few weeks, I'm like, Stephen A, yo, you're like polling at 2%. And then I'll text him, I'm like, Stephen A, you're polling at like 4%.
Right.
And then he sent me this article, was like, yo, you see I'm at 7 now? And I'm like, oh my God.
Well, he has said though, like, he doesn't think he's going to end up doing it. I think it sounds like he's surprised that he's polling as well. But do you think he could do it? Do you think he could actually win the presidency?
I think he's already disrupting. Do I think he can win the presidency? He would tell you he would not want to because that sort of reveals how weak a certain party is.
Right.
But, at Stanford, I graduated with international relations major, a primary specialization in comparative international governance, secondary specialization in Africa. So I am very passionate and aware of the news and politics. And so we gravitate, because that's his passion too. And so we gravitate towards each other in that conversation. But I think he'd be the first to say, like, he does not necessarily want to run. But let me tell you this. I will tell you this.
He's probably loving the attention, though.
I will tell you this. I hope he makes the debate stage.
Me too.
Because I think he will more than hold his own.
Oh, there's no question.
There is nobody that is more prepared for a presidential debate format than Stephen A, in my opinion.
I don't think you're wrong. That's not saying how he would be as a candidate, but as a debater against those other people.
We can talk about that another day. But as a
fascinating
debater, that is
debate.
his ultimate strength.
Yeah. Chiney, thank you so much for joining us. And we got a lot more interviews coming your way. Stay with us here on Front Office Sports.
Welcome back to Front Office Sports today, as we're going to dive into the business of what's hot and what's not across sports. So let's play a little bit of buy or sell, starting in Major League Baseball with your team, the Colorado Rockies, who are currently on pace for a 100-loss season. They've got the 3rd worst record since the expansion era began. And you look at their record the last few seasons, under 500, and of course right now on pace to be worse than last season's White Sox, which was a historically bad season. So Baker, buy or sell, the Rockies are the worst run franchise in Major League Baseball right now.
As a Colorado boy, stings me so much. Okay, so as we just saw from the previous graphic, the worst record ever in Major League Baseball history is 20 wins. The Rockies right now on pace for 21 wins, 1 game better. The answer to this is yes. I am buying this as the worst run franchise in Major League Baseball. A lot of fans would say that the owners, the Momforts, do not invest a ton into the team. When they do, it's for players like Chris Bryant, who haven't played more than 60 games in a season. But attendance is there. The Rockies are at least in the top 20 in attendance every single year, even though the team is on pace for its 8th straight losing season. And as you mentioned, its 3rd straight 100 loss year. Yes, the Rockies emphatically are the worst run franchise. There is concern maybe that Rob Manfred should step in and help Colorado, maybe force the Momforts to sell the franchise, maybe to the Cronkies or the Waltons who own the Broncos. But as a Rockies closeted fan, this is so depressing to watch, and I kind of hate watch the games. It's so sad.
I have to agree with you. I just feel like for the baseball side is one thing. When you're statistically high in strikeouts, low in runs, low in RBIs, their pitching is very inconsistent. That's one aspect. But the fact they haven't even invested in their club is bad. I mean, they don't have a farm system that's as developed as such as a team like the White Sox. So where is the money going? They also have one of the 10th lowest payrolls across the league. Not quite sure what they're really doing aside from their City Connects. It's the only thing thing I know of what's going on with the Colorado Rockies.
And by the way, the city connects are not well
it's not
either.
great. Financially, it's not great. But at least they have a stadium.
All right, speaking of stadiums, let's move on over the news from D.C. about the Commanders getting their new stadium in 2030, but it does look like it might have some roadblocks, Renee, as of course it has to be passed by the D.C. legislative branch. So buy or sell, Renee, the Commanders not going to play in the new RFK Stadium in 2030. One D.C. City Council member actually said if the vote was held today, it would not pass.
This is a classic Washington Football Club move. Excited off of their first NFC conference title run in over 30 years last year. Excited because they've got the rookie offensive player of the year in Jaden Daniels, their star quarterback, that they just launched. We're going to have this $3.8 billion proposal for a stadium. I actually think they will be playing in a new stadium by 2030.
Yeah.
I just think that they're going to have to scale back. It seems that their chief counsel and their mayor still have some budget issues to work through to crunch some numbers. I think they're going to push to get back to D.C. and return back into the city, but I don't think it's going to be as lofty. Maybe the retractable roof or something else have to come off the table, but I think they will, I'm going to buy they're going to be a new stadium by 2030.
Yes, so it's important. I'm with you, too. I think I buy them getting into the stadium by 2030. As you see, $3.8 billion is the proposal that Josh Harris is putting in. $1.1 billion would be coming from state funds, from taxes.
And that's the issue.
And that's the issue. I think it might be scaled back from Muriel Bowser, the D.C. mayor's initial budget, that maybe it's less than $1 billion and it's more palatable to a lot of those city council members who are going to vote on this to say, well, at least it wasn't $1 billion.
Well, there may be uncertainty around when that stadium is going to be built or if, but there is no uncertainty about what's going on with Bill Belichick and his girlfriend.
Oh.
So let's see what's bubbling over at the water cooler, Baker. Now, at the end of February, it was reported that Hard Knocks on HBO would feature UNC's football program and head coach Bill Belichick. Exciting news for the program. But then days later, if the deal fell apart. Now, the HBO production initially said that it was because the conversation took a turn they didn't like.
Yeah.
Come to find out, that conversation was 24-year-old Jordan, aka Jordan Hudson, girlfriend of Bill Belichick, who is also the chief operating officer of Belichick Productions, actively involved, and her involvement has been an issue for UNC and apparently for Hard Knocks and not want to do this feature.
Yeah, it seemed like, according to reporting from The Athletic, that the deal was in place for Bill Belichick to be featured on Hard Knocks, and within 24 hours of what they thought was going to be the announcement, basically it all fell apart, and as you mentioned, it had everything to do reportedly with Jordan Hudson wanting to be incredibly involved in the project. It's just showing you a whole nother level of what's going on with this relationship, because this could have been a big thing for the university, because North Carolina was going to get tons of exposure about him revamping and helping their football program, and there was hundreds of thousands of dollars that the university was going to be making on this as well. In addition to the exposure, we know how Hard Knocks has really helped with a lot of these NFL programs. It would have done the same for Belichick.
It's great for building a program to show the behind the scenes of how that build happens, and also financially a lot lost there. So that is a big disappointment for UNC, but we will have an exciting guest joining us tomorrow in Ian Rappaport. Stay tuned for that here on FOS Today. See you then.